Hello again, and welcome to another weekly edit. This week, I'm going to be editing in Adobe Bridge. Now, before you say, what the hell's going on, Adobe Bridge comes bundled with the Adobe suite, so whether you're on the full program or on the photography plan, like I am, and actually, I think you can actually download it for free. And it's a very, very useful program. Now, the reason I'm going to be editing in Adobe Bridge is because it also comes with Adobe Camera Raw, which is part of the Photoshop Lightroom suite. Now, Camera Raw has essentially evolved into its own editor outright, similar to Lightroom. It's the same raw engine that sits behind Lightroom, right? Lightroom just comes with sort of the DOM, the digital asset management aspects built in, and that does make Lightroom very useful, but can also be quite sluggish. Now, Adobe Bridge, being separate from Camera Raw, allows you to keep these two aspects separate. Some advantages of this is that Bridge is really, really quick. You can search for images, you can manage images, whether it's via tagging, star ratings, and also on the hard drive or folder structure. It integrates with the native file system on Windows or on Mac. So you don't need to import images into Adobe Bridge. So for me, that's actually very, very useful, and I'm actually playing around with it as a photo mechanic replacement. I might do a video of that in future, because photo mechanic is moving over to a subscription model. But that's actually not it's actually not that relevant to this video. So let me move on swiftly. And when you open an image from Adobe in Adobe Bridge, or double click on an image, it opens up in the native editor, which is Camera Raw, from which you can then jump into Photoshop. But Camera Raw has evolved to such an extent, similarly to Lightroom, that I find myself really needing to go into Photoshop anymore. I mean, I can't actually even remember the last time I opened Photoshop, and I used to do it fairly often. The main reason I would still do it, and do it every now and again, is for product photography, where we really need to do some pixel manipulation, etc. But anyway, let's jump into Adobe Bridge, and I'll show you what I do, or how I edit. Okay, so here I've got the image set open from our little family holiday to Finale Ligure in Italy. Now, I didn't actually have a lot of time to make images here. All these images were captured just from our balcony, our veranda. But the colors of the ocean and the different weather patterns, etc., just made it very, very interesting. And the camera I used made it possible to capture a wide variety of images. Anyway, so I am going to select this image here of it's not a lighthouse, just of the light beacon at the edge of the harbor. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on it. But before I do that, you can just see the structure here in Adobe Bridge. Now, it's got many different workspaces. I just stick to essentials most of the time. I've got my folder structure here on my hard drives. I've got all the filter opportunities down the left-hand side here, or bottom left, keywords, copyright notices, date created, date modified, orientation, etc. So it's really, really useful in that sense. And then on the right-hand side, I've got a full thumbnail view, and then I have all the metadata, as much as you want to add. Okay, so let's double-click on it. And you can see it opens up Camera Raw. Now, this is essentially, let me just make this a little bit bigger, you can see more. Now, this is essentially the same as Lightroom. It just looks slightly different. Okay, so currently this is the raw image. We can have a quick, well, there's no before-after possibility at the moment, because I haven't done any editing. So you'll recognize these tabs, or these edit modules or editing tabs from if you're familiar with Lightroom. But first, we're going to look at the profile. Now, it's just set on Adobe Color. Now, this is a landscape image, and I probably want to check out something like Adobe Landscape. And you can see those blues really, really popping out or standing out. Let me just do a quick before, after. So that's before the profile, after the profile. Now, I mean, I don't actually want to do much more. So But regardless, there's some things obviously I want to do. But I mean, editing wise, just by choosing a profile, I've pretty much arrived at my end destination. And this is one of my big editing philosophies as well, is just keeping things simple, not overcomplicating it, and just actually, especially with landscaping, just keeping in mind what it looked like when I was there on not on set, on the scene. Standing in front of that scene, looking out over the ocean, and which keeps me focused on the things that I want to edit and the things that are not essential, and then I can actually get out there and make more images. Okay, so that Adobe Landscape Profile has done most of my editing for me, actually. Exposure, I might darken this down slightly. Contrast, I'm going to stay away from. Highlights, let's see, pull that down. It's not doing too much, darkening the sky. Actually, I'm going to pull the highlights a little bit up, just create some contrast here. It's adding a nice bit of extra punch to these highlight streaks of light across the ocean here. Shadows, I might actually bring those down. So funnily enough, going the opposite direction one would normally do, which would be lifting the shadows and pulling down the highlights. White, holding down the Option key on a Mac and putting that up to see how far I can push that. Quite far it seems. About there, starts to blow out. Let's see how that looks. And let's look what happened. Let's zero that out and see what it looked before. Okay. Well, not Control C, Control Z. G. So that's added a nice bit of liveliness to the image, in my opinion. Now blacks, I'm probably going to stay away from mostly, because if you pull those down until the blacks start to get crushed, it's going to add too much contrast to the image, in my opinion. Yeah. So I'm actually going to just pull them in the opposite direction, actually. Add a bit of a fade there. Okay, so light section, before, after. Color-wise, temperature, I'm quite happy with the color temperature. It's pretty much almost a daylight. Daylight would be about 5500 Kelvin. Let's see what happens if we warm it up, cool it down. I'm actually going to leave it where it is. Saturation, I'm going to stay away from. Vibrance, I'm going to pull up to get some more color out of that ocean. You can see immediately there. That's it. Before, after. So the vibrance just enhanced those beautiful blue, turquoise, and aqua hues within the ocean. Those rocks are still looking nice and orangey, neutral, nice and warm. So under effects, we're going to look for texture, stuff like that. Let's just zoom in here to 100%. Now, okay, so here we can see there's a bit of noise there. We'll tackle that in a moment. Yeah, so actually dehaze effects, I don't really want to add too much there or anything. Now the curve is where I'm going to add a bit of contrast, so a very small S curve, just like that. And then we'll have a look at it before, after, and I'm going to raise the black point here. Nope, not like that. Roll all the way to the bottom here. There we go. Actually, let's undo that. Let's go to this one here. So we've edited that with a slight S curve. So all I want to do in here is just lift the black point ever so slightly. There we go. And then in the color mixer, let's go to all. So you. So let's see here. So I'm going to select the little targeted adjustment tool, and then I'm going to hit these rocks here. See, this is quite different than Lightroom, which actually makes it sometimes quite fun editing in Adobe Adobe Camera Raw. So I'm going to select those, and I'm going to pull them more towards orange, and then I'm going to select the lighter rocks here, pull them also a bit more towards orange. Okay, so let's see what that did. Well, let's zoom into 100% first. To 100%, get that nice into view, and we look at a before, after. just a little bit of more orangey warmth to them. They had a bit of, if you look at the before there, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but it's slight green tinge in there. Is that the right word? Okay, so that's going to be all in terms of color, in my opinion. Color grading, no, I think I'm going to leave that for now. Now detail, so here we can do the denoise option from the AI noise reduction built into Camera Raw as well. I'm going to do the manual noise reduction, old school way. So I'm looking at the harbor wall here, more shadowy areas, and then also in the water here. So if we go for luminance, we're going to pull it up too far initially, to about 20, and then if we look before, after, and then we're going to pull up that contrast slider just a tad, and detail to about there. And then if we look before, after. Now we haven't done any sharpening yet, so the image is a little bit soft. Might pull that down to 15, 17. So that's taken care of most of the noise. Remember, I also don't want to get rid of all the noise. I don't want a silky smooth image because it just looks unnatural, in my opinion. And in a moment, I'm actually going to add some grain back into the image to enhance the sharpness. Stay tuned for that. So detail in terms of noise reduction we've done. Now this is where, there's sharpening. I was going to say this is where Camera Raw is a little bit different. It's just because it's ever so slightly different look than Lightroom. Sometimes I get a little bit confused, disorientated. Anyway, so sharpening wise, I think it's applied some default sharpening. So if we take that off, it's taking the whole detail. Okay, so sharpening wise, what I like to do is do a small radius, and take that to 0.5, the smallest clicker, and a high amount. But detail, I'm also going to take down to about 15. Because I find with a high detail that tends to create that worm-like effect, in my experience. So then I'll take that all the way down, so you can see that's quite soft now. So if we zero that out to default, that's where we were. And now I'm going to pull this up to probably about 100. Well, I'm at 81, it's looking quite sharp already. Let's put it, see that's too far there, you can see, start to see some artifacts, sorry. And here if you pull up the detail, you can see it starts to get wormy. There we go. So detail I like to keep generally quite low, so at about 10, 15. Low radius and sharpening amount, in this case, probably about 80. And then if we go to before, after, and now you can see we've gotten rid of most of the noise and still retained the sharpening. And we go to optics. This I probably should have done first. So we go to remove chromatic aberration. Now it should pick up the lens profile. Okay, so this is a slightly more modern mirrorless camera. So it's likely it was built in. I'm not the world's expert on lens correction technicality. What was it? It was a Sony. Let's see Sony. Let's see what it does. No. Okay, so we're going to leave it on built-in mirrorless cameras. Was not an Apple. Why can't we leave it on built-in? Built-in. There we go. Okay, so lens blur, no thank you. And then calibration. So calibration, and you can see also actually while I interrupt myself here, the responsiveness and just of Camera Raw compared to Lightroom it's actually a world of difference. Now before we do calibration, let's have a quick look at the global before, after. Looking good. Now in calibration, I generally start with a blue primary, and more notably the saturation slider here. It's almost like a color contrast slider. So it just increases the contrast between most of the colors. So if we slide that up, you see what that does. I'm going to put it up too far, and then we look at a quick before after. So that's before color calibration, after. Now that's obviously way too far, but that just gives you a good idea of what it does. And I find it quite a useful adjustment, especially in scenes or in images where I want a bit more color contrast. So let's pull it up to about 20-ish, before, after. Yeah, looks good. And then I like to just pull the other sliders back and forth to see what they do. So let's do this. So that's going to take it more towards sort of teal. That's a little more purple. Take it a little bit to the left, and then green saturation. Also affects mostly the water. Zero that out. I think most of these, and then red. Red is a nice overall sort of almost like desaturation, but in a much more subtle way. I'm talking about the -8. It's good. Okay, and that's calibration. So let's just look at a quick before and after. Now, essentially, that's the edit done, Adobe Camera Raw, and but also what Camera Raw also has is all the blemish removal, generate the full stuff that Lightroom also has now. So let's remove one or two things. I'll show you guys how that works. So unlike Lightroom, in Camera Raw, you have down the right-hand side here, we can crop. While I am actually cropping, let's just quickly see, straighten that horizon ever so slightly, and I'm going to bring it down. And you can see that the yacht top left there. And we can, here I have our remove, and here we have our masking options. Red eye, I don't know what that is. Snapshots, okay. What's that? Presets. Okay, so now what I want to do, zoom in to 100%. And I'm going to get rid of these little yellow boys. So we can object aware, generate full. This is remove, this is heal, and this is clone. So let's go with heal. There we go. Boom. Boom. Gone. Gone. Now, obviously, you don't want to remove things that, especially in landscape photography, in an unethical way. But before I remove that boat, let me just quickly zoom out here again. What did I do there? Go back to fit in view. But if we just have a quick look here, so there they're back. Those boys on another day might actually not have been there. And in this case, depending on where I want to use the image, whether I want to use it as a piece in the local newspaper or on a blog or website to report the conditions or the situation, I wouldn't do that. But as a landscape image, these are little things that really just clean up the image nicely and just enhances the overall impact. And again, they might on another day not actually have been there, so it's not like I'm removing this light beacon. Same with the yacht in the distance there. In some respects, maybe it adds to the image, but in this case, I want to remove it just to really keep it plain and simple. So let's see what it does. Yeah, very good. Not bad. Let's just go back there quickly. Let's do heal. What was that? Heal. Yeah. So we're going to do that. That's a slightly better job, and we can actually refresh. Yeah, that's even better. Okay, so let's zoom out, fit in view, and now let's look at it before. So, and you can see those little aspects now that you see them once they were removed. You actually realize how much they draw the eye and distract from the main subject in the image, which is this the end piece of the pier of the harbor here with the light beacon. And I think that's pretty much that. Masking wise, I'm not going to do a lot here. We can maybe add a quick linear gradient, put it down, holding shift, keeping it straight for the sky there. And then I am going to add a bit of dehaze, just to get a bit of drama in that sky. And I am actually going to desaturate that sky just a tad, because that dehaze enhanced the color there just a tad. So that's for masking. I think that's going to be that. And then I mentioned some grain. So let's hop in, well, let's zoom back into 100% here. I'm going to go to effects and then grain. So sometimes it's not so easy to see, but within Camera Raw you can actually expand some of the smaller sliders within each module as well here. So let's pull grain up quite a bit. And you can see actually here, without grain, we've done noise reduction, we've done sharpening. The image is sharp, but just by adding a bit of grain without doing anything else, there it actually gets a bit of perceived increased sharpness, which is counterintuitive, but a very like a little pro tip or a sneaky bonus tip or something to keep in your back pocket for certain situations, because it's been used throughout the years by many people, not only photographers, also designers, to add increase or perceived sharpness to images by adding grain. So roughness wise, the size, again, I'm going to keep this a little bit down. Roughness I'm going to keep down a tad as well, and then I'm going to take it up too much to about there. And let's have a look at the before, after, and then I'm going to pull that down to where I want it, to about 20. There we go. Looks good. Okay. And I think let's have a look quickly, lastly, before, after. Vignette, let's add a global vignette. There we go. So, final color edit. Before, after. There we go. That's the color edit. Hope you guys found that interesting. If you want to stick around for the black and white edit, it's going to happen in 10 seconds. And yeah, then I think it's going to be that for this week. So let's quickly, let's quickly do that. So once you finish with an edit in Camera Raw, you just click done, or you can click in open, then it's going to open it in Photoshop. So I'm going to click done, and then the edit is applied, and it has these little icons with the image. And if you actually go to the image folder, you'll see a little XMP sidecar file with the edits stored, which is how Bridge realizes this image is actually edited. Now, in Bridge, you can't actually, I should have you can duplicate. Okay, I thought you could. So I'm going to click duplicate. So this is like a virtual copy. It says there, you can see a little copy in the name there, and this is also by way of the XMP file. So this is for our black and white edit. So let's double click on that. Take us back into Camera Raw, and then, like there are normally two ways that I do black and white edits in Lightroom, or well, actually mostly in any program. One is by desaturating it globally and then using the tone curve to add contrast, or by using some the black and white profiles, like in Lightroom, or in DxO, or in where else? Well, I don't know where else. Anyway. So in this case, because we're in Camera Raw, which is like Lightroom, and as you may know from my previous edits, I do like the black and white profiles that Lightroom or Adobe have, and that will also be available within Camera Raw. So let's go through some of these. So what I'm looking for here is a nice bit of contrast. That's too weird. That's also too weird. I find generally black and white 12 is quite nice. Version 2, that's quite weird. So I'm just mousing over these and seeing what sort of piques my interest. But black and white 9 was I think it was a good start. So let's click on that. And then you can also adjust the intensity there. So I'm just going to leave it at 100. And I am going to go back. And all I'm going to do now is just use the tone curve to add a little bit of additional contrast here. What I'm looking for in the black and white is nice punchy differences punchy difference between blacks and whites. And that, I think, is pretty much going to be that. I mean, if we look at it, okay, let's go. What are we going to do? Oh no, that's our screen. Let's have a quick look at increasing those blacks, taking them down. There we go. Fine. That's what I meant. And if we zoom into 100%, fit, 100%. I find with black and white images, I really like to add a bit of more, or not a bit, I like to add more grain. So if we go back to effects, I'm going to bump up the grain too much again. And I'm going to go to detail, because that seems to be negatively interacting with the noise reduction there. Take the noise reduction down to about 10. There we go. And then I can go back to the grain and then take that really far up to about 45. Let's see if we increase the size there. No, that's having a negative effect. And roughness, yeah. So fine, like a fine grain, in this case, the rougher, I think a little bit of rougher grain is quite good. And there we have the black and white image. So let's click on done. And there we go. Now, there we go. There's the black and white edit. And there's the color edit. Okay. I think that's going to be that. So, another weekly edit done, this time in Adobe Bridge by way of Camera Raw. Hope you found that useful. If you have any questions about Camera Raw or about Adobe Bridge, drop them down in the comments, or any other suggestions or comments or tips. I'm always open to learning new stuff. I'm also just learning as I go along, which is why I'm sharing it here. I'll see you guys in the next edit.